path to a more joyful, purposeful, and conscious life. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Stacie Shifflett, founder and CEO of Modern Consciousness, best-selling author, producer, and creator of the Treasure Map to Joy. Through her Elevate Your Life program, Stacie guides individuals to step off the treadmill of life and rediscover the unique formula of joy, fulfillment, and alignment. We are dividing into calming emotional triggers, tuning into intuition, and exploring how a whole life assessment can transform the way we show up every day. Welcome to the show, Stacie. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you, Anya. I'm really happy to be here.
Mhm. So, Stacie, you teach people how to calm emotional triggers. What's one of the biggest misconceptions people have about their triggers?
Oh, the biggest misconception is that they have a right to react, I think, honestly. Um, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is probably that that our reactions are our responsibility, right? We tend to think of it in the terms that someone else is pushing our buttons and that they know what buttons to push and that it's okay to react with irritability or whatever that reaction is. But in all honesty, we are fully responsible for how we react to anything and everything in our life.
Mm-hmm. Right. And how can we start seeing triggers as messengers instead of enemies?
Yeah, I think the best way to go about doing it is to look at it with open curiosity. I believe that the first thing you have to do is have some awareness and notice it. You have to notice what is happening in the moment and you have to catch it in the moment. And then I think that pausing before you react is very important and choose your response. And it's a habit that you create, right? So we get better at it the more we practice it. And if we don't fully understand, a lot of times we don't fully understand what it is that's triggering us. So we have to go into it with some open curiosity and do a little bit of soul searching. And I find, what I have my clients do at times is keep a little notebook in your pocket or in your handbag, right? And as things trigger you throughout the day, make a mental note or jot it down in your notebook, what it is. And generally, I mean, we can trigger joy also, right? Or joy can be triggered within us, but I'm generally speaking about those things that cause some sort of stress or anxiety within us. So if you start taking note of what those things are, then you can set aside some quiet time to reflect upon it and start asking yourself questions about why did you react in that way. It takes a little soul searching.
Mm-hmm. And that really reframes it beautifully. It's like our emotions are here to guide, not derail us.
Absolutely. I actually call triggers waypoints on our treasure map to joy. And honestly, if I could just share one thing with people, if I was only allowed to say there was one thing I could tell you that would make such a huge, huge difference in your life, it would be calming those emotional triggers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, you talk about leaning into intuition. For someone who is always second guessing themselves, what's a small practice to start trusting their intuition more?
Well, for one, we have a lot of intrusive thoughts, throughout the day. And oh gosh, I'm not going to remember the numbers, but I think we have, what is it, some 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. And about 95% of those, I'm sure I'm not citing the statistics correctly, are the same thoughts that we have every day. And most of those, again, 90 some odd percent of those are negative. So developing your intuition, we all have intuition. We've all had those experiences where we felt, deep within our gut that something felt off, right? We've all had an experience with a person or something that we thought, that's just not right. And it's a situation that you wanted to avoid. And that's intuition. Conversely, sometimes you have that intuitive feeling that something is just very, very right. I'm not saying it's always wrong by any means, but I'm trying to think of an example for your audience. We just feel like something is deep, deep within us, really the right thing to do. And so it's learning to find some quiet in your mind and be aware of what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And generally, the intuitive thoughts feel different than the other thoughts. They're a little deeper. It's almost like a deep, deep knowing. Um, for me, for example, I woke up one morning and had an idea, just such a deep, profound thought that I need to buy this software company. There was a technology company. It was in my career space at the time. I knew the company, I knew people that were in the company, and I just had a very strong intuitive hit that I needed to pursue buying this company. Now, the funny thing about that, I mean, I was absolutely 100% certain about it. The funny thing about that was I didn't have any money to buy the company. So, it unfolded in a really interesting way because I did call the owners. I knew they were I think there were 5 or 6 of them, and most of them were in their 80s or older. There was one that was a little bit younger, and, they had ironically just listed the company for sale with a broker. And my first reaction to that was like, that's probably not the best, but it ended up actually being the best because I didn't have the money to do it. So it took 9 months. I pulled a very small team together. That, of course, it consisted of some attorneys. I pulled another gentleman in on the idea with me that had some of the qualifications that I didn't. And I just felt so strongly that that is what I was to do and that I would make it happen. It was a very unusual circumstances because, as I said, I didn't have any money and it was a $50 million company, right? So I learned a little bit about mergers and acquisitions, and we put together demonstrations and presentations, and we started shopping the idea around to business investors. And we did end up doing a deal. It took 9 months, and I had a lot of negative reaction from people, right? People said I was crazy, that I could never make it happen. You can't buy a company without any money. So I listened to myself. I listened to my intuition and how I felt things should go rather than listening to what the external world was telling me. And it took 9 months, but we did find an investor. We did buy the company. And when they flipped that company in 5 years, I had a good employment contract with them. I took my money and got out, and it's sold several times since then. But that's probably one of the most powerful intuitive hits that I've ever had, as well as creating modern consciousness. It's a whole nother story. But it's a matter of listening to your inner thoughts, right? I felt compelled to do this. I had never considered buying a company before. It was just very strange to wake up and go, I feel really strongly I need to do this. Let's see if I can do it. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. But how do you personally tell the difference between intuition and fear?
Oh, fear. Fear is not usually connected to intuition, even if you intuitively, for me anyway, even if I intuitively meet someone and or I find myself in a situation where I am uncomfortable, I don't necessarily have fear, but I will tune into what I'm really feeling in the depth of my soul, right? It's just a very powerful thought. It's different than a fleeting thought. It's very deep and internal. And and I will follow it, right? So I will just excuse myself from the situation or make a mental note about that person, and it might not be somebody I want to be around very often. But yeah, it's just it's it's something that's deeply connected to our soul. It feels different than just a random thought. And I honestly do believe that everybody has had this experience, probably had it multiple times in their life. So again, it comes back to awareness and noticing it, noticing how that feels versus how other thoughts that you have feel or how fear feels, and learning to distinguish that for yourself because it's a little bit different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And I love that distinction. It's so empowering to trust that inner compass.
Yeah, it really is. I was on a podcast, I think it might have been earlier this week actually, and it was on the topic of listening. It was on the topic of intellectual health and listening. And it was a it was a panel discussion and a great group of people. And my topic, my take on that and my suggestion on listening is listening to yourself. We have all of the answers inside of us. We have to dig a little bit to find them, but we know what brings us joy. We know what brings us happiness. We know what irritates us. And sometimes we just have to sit with that and dig a little bit and get acquainted, or I would say reacquainted with our inner selves. You know, we should be our best friends. We should think about ourselves and talk to ourselves the way we would talk to anyone that we love and care about deeply. So often we're so harsh with ourselves, but we would never be that harsh with someone else, right? You know, women, for example, or anybody, I suppose, you know, a lot of times we say, you know, if we're overweight, you know, every time we walk by a mirror or look at ourselves or try to put on our clothes, we're like, oh my God, you're so fat, you're so fat, you're so fat. But if we had a friend that was overweight, we wouldn't be looking at them in the face and going, oh my God, you're so fat all the time, right? So we have to learn to change our thoughts and how we talk to ourselves in order to open up all of these capabilities within us. It's really a matter of connecting with your inner self.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, in your Elevate Your Life program, you guide clients through a whole life assessment. Why is it so important to look at the big picture instead of just focusing on one area, like career or relationships?
Well, if something is showing up in one area of our life, it is probably showing up in other areas as well. It's just disguised. Um, I don't think that we can get to where we want to go. And I define where we want to go as in what we want to be experience in life, right? What we want to be experiencing. It's not necessarily external achievements. But until we sit down and take a high level look, but a very detailed look as well of all of the different domains of our life, how we feel about each one, what's working well, what isn't, what causes us frustration, what's creating joy, and then look at how they interact with each other. And unless we take that, in my opinion, unless we really take a good hard look at that, we don't really have a good starting point. Um, it's just imperative, even if you get in the car and you wanna go somewhere, to get directions, you have to know the starting point. right? So I think it's very, very important, and it's not something that we're taught to do. So, what I do in my program is start with this life assessment, which is just a thorough, non judgmental, right? We're looking at it a curiosity. Nobody's judging anybody. We're certainly not judging ourselves. But to really explore your life and look at all of the key areas, because we have to set a foundation to create a fulfilling journey ahead. So, we need to understand where we are. And then with my clients, I go through a process that I call aspirations, which is really uncovering what does our heart want, right? What is giving our lives deeper meaning? And it goes way beyond just traditional goal setting of that, I want to get a promotion or I want a new car or I want a new house. It's more the why, right? Why do we want those things? And things that really resonate with your soul. So we look at that. And then I have a process that I call architecting the bridge, which essentially is we're saying, okay, here's where you are. This is what you're currently experiencing. This is what you would prefer to be experiencing in your life. What brings us joy is unique to each one of us. And then what can we do, right? How can we narrow it down to what's going to positively impact our life the most and the most broadly, right? Because oftentimes people try to change too many things at once, and that's a setup for failure. Um, so we want to really align our journey with the soul's intentions and transform our aspirations into actionable steps, right? Um, I had a client that was complaining that she couldn't trust. She had to do everything herself. Nobody could do anything right. She never could find the right help because, again, she didn't think anybody else had the capabilities that she had. Um, and she didn't have the money, right? And plus, she didn't have the money, and her business wasn't performing the way that it wanted to perform, that she wanted it to perform. But when you sit back and look at that, and we start looking at the patterns in her life, which is what I do in the Architecting the Bridge module. She had patterns of excessive spending. She was soothing with buying luxury items, handbags and things of this sort. She had a strong desire to build her company, but yet you can't scale a company if you're the only person working at the company, right? So we kind of had to get to the bottom of that as well and understand that, not everybody may do it the same way that we do it. And you might have to go through a person or two or three before you find the right fit. You can do that through really good interviewing and really making it very clear. But it's actually creating a team, right? She needed to think of this person as her team. So we worked on that, and then she realized that she was actually sabotaging her own success with these things. So we worked to take steps for her to correct, for lack of a better word, to address these things and to make these changes. And sometimes it's a matter of starting simply, right? We may not realize that we're soothing ourselves with extraneous purchases and luxury purchases, and you have to look a little bit about, why are you doing that? And that can come into unfulfillment in a different area of life. Maybe her social life was not what she had hoped it would be. So, it's just a matter of looking at all the pieces and connecting the dots and then getting an effective plan in place that you can take steps and that you know what those steps are and can consistently do them over a period of time and really align your life with what you want to be achieving.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, what surprised people the most when they map out their entire lives?
I think one thing we focus so often in our minds, we focus on the things that irritate us the most, right? Um, we don't seem to I think the biggest surprise is people to go, wow, my life really is okay, right? It really is pretty good. It needs some refinement, um, to have a better experience, but that it's really good. And I think the other surprising thing is how much they contribute to that experience. We so often look at outside circumstances and blame others or other situations for what we are experiencing. But again, back to what we talked about originally, we are responsible for our actions, for our reactions, for our choices, for our behavior. And I think the program really brings that home to people. And a lot of times they just don't know, or they've never sat down and really taken a good look at it. And, they just didn't know. So you can't do anything about something you don't know anything about. So that's why we do a lot of exploration.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. Sometimes we don't even realize what's out of balance until we step back and look.
Yes. And sometimes there's some minor, relatively minor tweaks that can make a huge difference. One example that I think uh, a lot of people can resonate with. Sometimes people will be very harsh on themselves that they are not professionally successful. In their mind, they're not successful. And it was interesting when I had the technology company, we had a help desk department, right? And um, sometimes management would come to me because I ran all the services in the company, and they would say, well, I think so and so is not really very motivated because they're not looking to grow from the position in technical support and software support to a higher ranking position in the company. And not everybody's seeking that higher ranking position in the company, right? Sometimes and we needed those people, right? They performed a very critical role. So sometimes when we're telling, now this was someone else that was saying this, but sometimes we tell ourselves, gosh, I'm really not as successful as I should be. Let's say someone that's in a technical support role, because they're not climbing that corporate ladder. But when they really sit down and look at it, they go, wow, I have a good job. It's a great foundation. It gives me all the money that I need to be comfortable right now. It's 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever. It's consistent hours. I don't have to dedicate a lot of time outside of work to work. So I have time free for myself, for my family to pursue the things that I want to do. And the realization is that, oh, I don't think I'm successful because my definition of success isn't my own. It's society's definition of success. So we have to look inward and say, what is your definition? What is my definition of success? And I would call that quite successful because I have also known people that were, attorneys that worked 70, 80 hours a week. They might be on the phone at 1 o'clock in the morning. They were so stressed. They were making money. They had the credentials, but they were so stressed that their family fell apart. They didn't have any personal time, couldn't enjoy life. So is that really success to them? So that's why I say our treasure maps to joy are unique to us. Everybody, what creates joy is unique to every individual. And that's okay. But let's figure out what that is.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, you have worked across industries and even produced a Broadway show. How has creativity played a role in your own personal evolution?
I guess I'm just that way. I started off, even very young, sort of forging my own path and having confidence in myself that I could. create my own life in the way that I wanted to create it, and I've done that since a very young age. I've been in the hospitality industry. I have been in the tech industry. I had a construction company. I now have a consulting and coaching company here with Modern Consciousness. I even had a llama farm, right? When my son was born, I was very fortunate to be able to quit work for a while. I kept my finger in it a little bit. I was a subject matter expert, so people kept calling. I would do a little technical writing or maybe a proposal here and there, but um, I like to learn. I'm a lifelong learner, and I guess I create. Creativity to me is also learning because it's expanding me beyond the borders of my mind.
Mhm. That's amazing. So, do you think joy is something we find or something we create?
Oh, I think we create it. We create it, but we have to come to an understanding of what it means to us. We have to overcome all of the social conditioning. And we have tons of that, right? From our parents, our family, our schools, our, w- churches, whatever. Um, we have so much thrown at us from external sources that it's really our responsibility to say, okay, it's time for me now to sit back and see what I want and really reconnect to your authentic self and decide what creates joy for you. If you don't know what that is, you won't ever achieve it. So that's why I think it's so very important to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's such an inspiring lens. Joy is something we get to build, not wait for.
Yes, we have to create it. Um, and we take ourselves everywhere we go, right? So we are the one constant in our lives. It's us. So who do you want to take with you everywhere you go? Do you want to take somebody that's grouchy and stressed and anxious and short-tempered and has a negative outlook on life? Or do you want to take someone that is has a positive outlook on life and enjoys life, can be present in any moment and enjoy whatever they're doing, even if it's grocery shopping. I enjoy grocery shopping. I can be fully present and joyful in the store, grocery shopping, not thinking about a hundred other things. And it just takes practice, a consistent practice.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So, Stacy, thank you for lighting up this conversation with such wisdom and heart. And listeners, if you're ready to chart your own treasure map to joy, visit to connect with Stacy and explore her Elevate Your Life program. Remember, your joy, your purpose, your inner light, it's already within you. Thanks for tuning in to Inner Light. So until next time, keep shining.